Across the retail forest, a massive kingdom was built. This is the story of Toys R Us, Babies R Us, and Kids R Us. At the edge of the clearing, a giraffe watched the history of the company unfold, calm, towering, and quietly part of every memory. But in the end, a cold, sharp reality was waiting to strike the company. The wheel of fortune took a devastatingly bad turn, completely breaking the empire's luck. Our story takes place in the forest, where interesting things always happen in the corporate wild. Let's drop into the forest and see how it all started. Washington, D.C., 1948. Suddenly, infants flood the territory. Exhausted mothers drag themselves through the brush, dropping newborns into any clearing they can find. Enter Charles Lazarus. He drags heavy wooden crib panels and vinyl mats into a crude, uncoordinated pile, slapping a sign over the makeshift structure, Children's Bargain Town. June 1957? The colony has a problem. Those tiny infants have grown into hyperactive kids, and parents are losing the physical strength to contain them. To stop the total breakdown of order, Lazarus has a solution. He realizes he can maintain control through a brilliant gimmick, handing each rowdy chimp a bright Fisher-Price corn popper. It instantly shuts them up, restoring complete peace to the territory. Lazarus establishes a new institution in Rockville, Maryland. Scraping the old baby furniture sign away, he renames the store Toys R Us. Caution is thrown to the wind. A big box warehouse layout rises right in the middle of the woods, creating an immediate, hostile clash. A local colony of mom-and-pop badgers who sell small forest toys to the chimpanzees completely panics. Their tiny shops stand zero chance against this gigantic warehouse. Soon, the giant wipes them off the map. By 1965, the warehouse faces a major vibe check. The towering metal walls feel far too cold and intimidating for the family market. To fix this, they pull off a sneaky psychological trick. They take a primitive, flat sketch from their old leaflets named Dr. Giraffe, rename him Geoffrey, and prepare a major television invasion. The trick works perfectly, but beneath the friendly television smiles lies a brutal financial trap. The cute giraffe hypnotizes the kids and exhausted parents into handing over every last dollar, completely draining the multi-generational family nest egg, one toy at a time. By 1982, a deep gloom settles over the chimpanzee colony. Parents stare at empty wallets, mourning the hard-earned cash already lost to Toys R Us. Any sense of teamwork completely falls apart as families bicker over dwindling resources. Throughout the 1980s, the holiday season triggers a highly organized phenomenon. Commercials show long lines of young kids stepping onto neighborhood streets, stomping in perfect sync and singing the jingle in unison as they head straight toward the store. The holiday media takeover floods family screens across the territory with thousands of marching feet. Across the canopy, identical rooftops sprout like invasive fungi, claiming new corners of the forest. Rushing ahead with a copycat plan, Toys R Us tries to repeat its victory by taking over the clothing market. February 1983. The Empire constructs a 25,000 square foot Kids R Us warehouse right next to the existing Toys outpost. This twin store design forces a giant, chaotic gathering of families into a single bottleneck. The sheer volume of traffic fails to flow smoothly, grinding the entire habitat to a halt. The double retail loop stalls out completely in the parking lot, triggering an absolute emotional breakdown. Unhinged dads lose all composure, violently mashing horns and screaming through windows, utterly trapped between the toys and the clothes. Inside, local consumers wander past rows of tiny denim jackets and neon socks instead of Cabbage Patch Kids and Hot Wheels, baffled by how to play with a pair of sweatpants. Yet, the lure of a golden jackpot draws them in. Rows of glittering, brand-name designer tags boasting steep discounts. The second they check out, pure buyer's remorse sets in. Parents lament over piles of cash sacrificed for clothing their offspring will ruin in 5 minutes flat. Moving past the old domestic street battles, the Empire looks across the ocean for fresh targets. In 1984, new retail seeds are planted in Canada and Singapore, followed rapidly by the UK in 1985. The global invasion hits peak chaos in 1991, when Toys R Us forces its way into Japan. Local merchants try to block the intruder, but the giant doesn't care. It aggressively forces a literal rewrite of Japan's retail laws, clearing a massive space to drop a toy warehouse directly onto foreign soil. Meanwhile, back in the domestic habitat, standalone Kids R Us fortresses pop up from coast to coast. The apparel spin-off reaches its absolute ecological peak, expanding to 146 standalone stores nationwide to anchor the corporate portfolio. And in March 1994, founder Charles Lazarus officially steps down as CEO. The workers fall into complete disarray. They huddle around the aisles with limp wings, completely obsessed with the vacancy at the top, while ignoring untouched shipments of inventory sitting right behind them. Out in the aisle, the consumers don't care at all. They simply step right over the distracted worker bees to hunt for more toys. April 1996. The Empire drops a new breed of infant sanctuary across the landscape. Launching Babies R Us in Westbury, New York. Cathode ray screens flicker to life under the leaves, looping soft-lit advertisements across the dark woods. The corporate call, everything under the sun for your little one, echoes from built-in speakers. Expectant mothers emerge from the deep brush, tracking the warm glow with unblinking eyes. Territorial expansion turns aggressive in 1997. The corporation spends $376 million to completely swallow the 78 stores of Baby Superstore Inc. This rapid expansion results in a mid-air logistical pileup. Cardboard boxes of diapers and baby rattles collide, raining straight down and completely burying a group of screaming dads under an avalanche of pastel pink nursing pillows. By 1998, a terrifying shadow slowly falls across the forest floor. An apex predator has invaded the habitat. Walmart. It rises over the hill, hunting everything in sight and targeting the very heart of the toy throne. Suddenly, consumers turn their heads away from the old Toys R Us stores, their attention captured by the cheaper retail across the clearing. Immediately, a wave of defensive hoarding behavior sweeps through the migrating pack. Fathers aggressively tuck high-end video game cartridges deep under their armpits. They lock their hairy fingers around Toy Story items, stubbornly refusing to let go as they desperately shield their low-priced cargo from any outside rivals. By 2000, Amazon weaves a massive web across the canopy. Desperate to offload their heavy shipping burdens, Toys R Us drops a 10-year exclusivity contract right into the arachnid's fangs. But total imbalance strikes when the tarantula secretly opens its web to outsiders. A wild swarm of third-party toy sellers floods the Amazon platform, completely upsetting the equilibrium. Toys R Us unleashes a legal counterattack. They march straight into the courtroom, dragging the multi-legged monster before a judge for a grueling 6-year battle. The court forces the tarantula to cough up $51 million. The victorious giraffe watches as the worker bees haul away the heavy pile of cash, high-fiving with their antennas. Families troop into a newly built $35 million sanctuary in Times Square. Inside, a 60-foot Ferris wheel churns through the air, sending baskets of thrilled kids looping toward the ceiling. The young primates screech with pure satisfaction, clutching bags of treats as they rotate over the crowded floor. Deeper into the lavish structure stands a towering Barbie dream house, where mothers wander through the boutique in a daze of absolute wonder. But by November 2003, a dark despair settles over the clothing market. Walmart and Target launch a brutal price war, flooding the territory with dirt-cheap garments. Kids R Us loses its aggressive edge, frozen in a state of weak, ineffective panic as their profits drain away into the mud. An immediate tactical retreat is executed. They permanently shut down all 146 standalone Kids R Us stores across the territory. Scavenging their remaining resources, they drag the leftover tiny denim jackets and neon socks directly inside the main Toys R Us walls. 2005. A trio of private equity predators enters the forest, masking their cruel intent behind a beautiful, alluring display of corporate courtship. A $6.6 billion leveraged buyout package. The Toys R Us beaver bosses exhibit absolute recklessness, blindly diving into the trap without looking down. The predators immediately saddlebag the empire with over $5 billion of crushing debt. By 2009, the beavers are eager to rescue their fading prestige. Following institutional traditions, they launch a fierce, reckless charge straight into the high-end retail market. In an attempt to lure in wealthy families, Toys R Us aggressively swallows the iconic elite kingdom of FAO Schwarz. But a total failure of long-term planning leaves the corporation unable to balance the suffocating weight of Manhattan rent against their cash flow. In July 2015, they permanently shutter the doors of the famous Fifth Avenue flagship store, abandoning the luxury monument entirely. Toys R Us executes an emergency fire sale in October 2016. 360 Group calmly steps into the clearing and collects the glittering ruins of the FAO Schwarz brand, leaving the heavily scarred Toys R Us empire to limp back into the shadows of the forest to nurse its terminal wound. September 2017. A sharp chill slices through the upper canopy. A frantic group of beaver bosses clutches a stack of rigid legal papers, teeth chattering as they stare at a mountain of unpaid debt. The journey toward endless toy dominance, the promise of 1 million toys under one roof that a kid could play with, grinds to a bone-jarring halt. Left with no other options, the beavers invoke the ancient Orthodox ritual of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. A shockwave ripples through the forest. Inside the stores, worker bees freeze mid-air, dropping boxes of Tickle Me Elmo, Rory the Racing Car, and Power Rangers. The vibrant energy of the chimp colony sours into pure primate panic. Frantic mothers sprint down the aisles, weeping into display cases and violently hoarding the very last easy-bake ovens before the doors lock forever. But while the Southern Territory plunges into absolute ruin, the Wheel of Fortune spins differently across the northern border. The Canadian outposts execute a brilliant legal balancing act. For years, the northern bees had survived the cash leaks of the southern bosses, running around like caffeinated insects to juggle everyday resources. Now, an emergency courtroom intervention delivers a clean stroke of legal justice, severing the Canadian stores from the American branch. Instead of falling into the abyss, the Northern Division enters a new corporate marriage with Fairfax Financial. Deep in the snowy woods, the iconic multicolored vertical rainbow stripes along the facade remain perfectly intact. Across the vast Pacific, the eastern outposts look back at the American mainland and collectively decide to walk away from the burning wreckage. Rather than letting the incoming tide of bankruptcy drag them under, over 400 stores across Japan, China, and Singapore remain completely untouched, shielded by a joint venture with the Fung Group in Hong Kong. June 2018. The wheel completes its final devastating turn across the United States. The corporation liquidates. Workers rush through the remaining 700 stores, slapping giant neon yellow "Everything Must Go" stickers over every surface. Bargain-hunting families stampede the aisles, juggling heavily discounted car seats and Bob the Builder toys like circus performers. Collectors snatch up half-priced Barbie dream houses as the final cash registers are ripped directly out of the counters. The domestic empire meets a lingering, agonizing end. Now, the tallest creature in the forest stands perfectly still. completely alone. His long neck bends low, beneath the exposed ceiling rafters. The lanky animal grips the handle of a small, comical, human-sized suitcase in his teeth. He takes a slow, incredibly clumsy step toward the exit. Halting at the threshold, he extends his neck toward a solitary toggle on the wall. With a sharp, sudden click of the teeth, the main switch drops. The last fluorescent bulb blinks out, plunging the kingdom into total darkness, leaving a final farewell message glowing across the territory as a tiny spark of future inspiration. Don't ever grow up. Locked out of the old territory, the giant stays caged for years, pacing behind invisible bars with nowhere left to stand. Then, without warning, the bars lift. Geoffrey stirs. He doesn't rebuild. He simply rises, towering back up out of the dust like the tallest survivor of a habitat nobody expected to hear from again. He isn't rising to sell toys. He's rising to reclaim the name. In 2021, a brand management firm named WHP Global seizes controlling interest over the wreckage. They lock their grip on the Toys R Us name, dragging the dormant Babies R Us and Kids R Us territories up right beside it. Rather than constructing its own warehouse, the giraffe slips quietly into a host habitat. Inside 400 Macy's stores, a new shared floor space appears. Every other display sits low around it, forcing Geoffrey into an awkward sitting position, legs crossed at an angle no giraffe was built to hold. He stays stuck there, longing for the wide-open aisles he no longer controls. Across the forest, a second orphaned name stirs. Babies R Us doesn't rise on its own. It gets carried, lifted by someone else's hand, and folded into someone else's territory. Inside 200 Kohl stores, a new nursery section appears. Parents wander in, expecting a sprawling infant outpost, and find themselves squeezed between school uniforms and kitchenware instead. The forest looks different now. There's a softer weapon. Screens flicker across the habitat with digital ads. The same jingle that once hypnotized a generation gets aimed at a new target. Those rowdy young chimps are grown now. Chimps with kids of their own. And the call finds them anyway. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. It plays again. It is no longer a demand shouted at an exhausted parent, but an invitation whispered directly to one. The grown chimps pause. Old memory stirs before logic gets a chance to argue against it. Wallets open, not for themselves this time, but to hand the same tune down to the smaller hands gripping theirs. The forest settles into something strangely at peace. An old song, still playing over a habitat that never fully rebuilt, but never fully died either.